Hello and welcome to this special DD Day live stream coming from Anthony Burgess Centre here in Manchester and supported by the wonderful Blue Dot. So for those of you that don't know, Delia Derbyshire Day is a small growing charity based here in Manchester, and we're honouring the work and legacy of the late great Delia Derbyshire, who lived from 1937 to 2001. We consider Delia to be a key figure in the development of electronic music in this country, and many still cite her as a big influence on the music we listen and dance to today. So despite Delia sadly no longer being with us, she's definitely still making waves. Our charitable objectives are to promote the education and art of electronic music via the works, working methods and archive of Delia Derbyshire. Delia's archive, which is her sort of work outside of the BBC, if you like, outside of the BBC archive, lives here in Manchester at the John Rylands Library. And when I instigated Delia Derbyshire Day back in 2011, her archive arrived about the same time I did in Manchester, and I suspected that this gem of electronic music heritage would become a rich source of inspiration and education, and it certainly has. So DD Day itself is now fixed as the 23rd of November, and we've had loads of amazing activity online today with our online content and loads of social media frenzy. So I hope you've managed to take part in that or be free of it. Could also be a blessing. And yeah, the reason we've chosen the 23rd of November is because it's the date that Delia's iconic realisation of Ron Grainer's Doctor Who theme first beamed into British living rooms and apparently sent lots of children running behind their sofas. A very important job, if ever there was one. And yeah, thank you to Blue Dot for offering to present this live stream, because this year we decided to play it safe and do online activities. So this was a nice way of being able to connect with you on the day and also give our artists the opportunity to actually present themselves and actually meet each other in some cases. We've been at Blue Dot for a couple of years already. I think 2017 was the first one, and then 2019, and we'll be there again next year. So it's lovely to continue this partnership with Blue Dot, which is a brilliant art and science festival. I would like to recommend that you have headphones or decent speakers nearby, because there will be high quality audio for you to experience, and I want you to make the most of that in case you're not equipped in that way right now. Go and find those gadgets. I'd like to thank our funders, Arts Council and the Granada Foundation, for our programme of activities this year, which has included pilot online courses for beginners and more experienced sound and music makers. We've had a series of online masterclasses and expert talks, of which the transcripts are now available via our website. And we've also been producing some teacher video resources for schools around found sounds and sampling, which taps into a lot of the science curriculum as well as music curriculum here. And we've also been talking with our Delian Council of Young Creatives about how we can support them in the future. So, as part of this feast of new art that we are going to share with you this evening, I'd like to introduce our commissioned artists. These are 4 Northwest England-based artists who were selected by our trustees and staff, and they were clearly dedicated to their craft and dared to be bold, like Delia did. So we're kind of looking for that Delian spirit and that dedication to your art form. And these artists have put in so much to make these works, and they've worked in pairs. So there's 2 new audio-visual works that will be premiered this evening, and the works are inspired and informed by Delia's archive, her work, her working methods, but also the theme of imagination, which is the theme for our project this year, which we felt was particularly kind of making the most of the resourcefulness of the last couple of years that most of us have had to dig deep for. And so I think we'd like to move on to introducing you to the artists. So we have Katie Mason, Susie Mungeon, Lacey Liang, aka Post Liang, and Madeline Hall, aka Empty Hall. So I'm going to go straight in with asking about Delia, And what do you think it is that makes Delia still capture imaginations today? Can I start with you, Katie?
Yeah, sure, yeah. So, everything about Delia was about imagination, and you kind of, through the sounds that she made, based on like a title for a program or a radio show, it's just like a simple one-word thing, or, she recreated or created that world just through the sounds. So, especially if you think of, the radio, for example, like your imagination goes, and these whole pictures are painted that she does for you. So it's completely linked to imagination, and still now, when you hear her, it sounds so futuristic and so, current, and also, from the future. So back then, I can imagine it must have just been mind-blowing as it is now.
They called it the theatre of the mind, didn't they, about how, especially working for radio, because you're creating those worlds.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's something that's timeless, and if you have that that kind of creativity, and people like to enjoy to imagine things themselves as well. You don't always want to be spoon-fed stuff, which I think is that really lovely thing of that era as well. I think that's just always going to be inspiring to people.
Yeah, fantastic. Susie?
I think a lot of her work, a lot of her sound, it just hasn't dated. Some of it, is very much rooted in a particular late 60s sound, like some of the white noise things, but her wider work, the sounds, they're really relevant today. To anyone working in soundscape, sound art, electronic music, you find that you're working with the same things, but I think what maybe appeals to people as well is that there's that timeless sound, but she's very iconic. She's got that 60s look in all those pictures that keep getting reproduced, and people are really drawn to that as well. And I think people love the difference between the look and the sound as well. But it's still really fresh and inspiring, a lot of the sounds.
Yeah, especially when you've had the opportunity to interact with the archive as well.
Yeah.
A lot of that does blow your mind, doesn't it? Yeah. Lovely. Lacey?
And I think to me, she's such an inspirational figure. Is how she pushed the boundaries, and her focusness and her diligence actually made her thrive in the industry. And this, like how she can live in the future of electronic music 50 years ago, and she continued to inspiring people from nowadays. Yeah, so I think the imaginative, like she created a space that is imaginative for everyone, just to get access to her music and get to visualize what she's trying to deliver in her sonic sound.
Yeah, we find that with our education work as well. We work with kids, and a lot of them will say Delia is inspiring, or music's sick, we'd listen to that today, and she can still communicate with with kids of all ages, to be honest, that we've worked with. Brilliant. Maddie?
I definitely agree. The boundary pushing is something that has always really excited me about Delia's work, and particularly how she recontextualizes sound. So you can have a sound that's drawn from, the classic example of the light shade, lampshade, and then she creates something that is completely beyond anything we could imagine. And so it's the space that she creates, and what I find so inspiring is just the power of what I imagine is. She just kind of delivers that for us, and so when I'm working, I'm thinking, okay, how can I get some of that power? That's where I found myself, kind of where I rooted myself, I think, in the process of making, was thinking about how she reconceptualizes, positions sound to things that are kind of, completely outside of what we could imagine.
Yeah, you talked about the gift that she gave to our imaginations, and you're right, it's getting that balance, not spoon-feeding or telling people, but unlocking for them in their minds what they can find and
what that means to us as an
yeah.
individual, because we all do it differently. And
yeah, wonderful. And I wonder if you could tell us a bit about how you interacted with the archive. Obviously, there was I think you were all able to get there in person in the end. And what items in particular acted as a springboard for your new work?
The experience of visiting the archive was amazing. I've never actually done anything like that before. So for one, to kind of spend a bit of time in the space with Delia's sort of collection of things was a sort of a different way of maybe getting to know her, or the character of Delia that I was researching, and how that would inform the film. So there were loads and loads of things that I loved, in particular a group of objects, so sort of cotton bobbins, some prayer cards. They're old items that have been preserved for a long time, and you know, again, your imagination's just thinking about where have they been sitting, which loft have they been sitting in, like why have they been kept for so long? And I love that as a collector myself. So within that box in particular, I think there was a sketchbook that had a really nice picture of some flying geese on the front, and inside there was just one page. The rest of it was empty, but there was a selection of dried flowers that were taped in from a trip to Robert Burns Memorial Garden, and they were just really beautifully arranged and taped down, and then underneath there's just a little handwritten description of where they were picked and the date. And there's just something about that I love the fact that it's been preserved since she would have been quite small, and you can then imagine each space, each place, and it builds up this picture of that area. And there's still a bit of colour in all the flowers. It's incredible. So that was something that I used in the film when I went up to Gilsland. I collected bits of plants and flowers and dried them out and used them within sort of a collage. So yeah, it was great.
I spent a couple of intense days working in the archive, which I loved, because I'm a musician, but I'm also a historian by training as well. So I really loved the idea to combine the research and the music, but just to sort of throw myself into the archive without actually having to come up with an argument, to just see where it would take me. So there were lots of things. I couldn't get through it all. I was trying to do the music and the boxes, and there was just too much. So I had to focus. I felt like there was a lot of stuff from her childhood, and had this strange sense of getting to know Delia as a child in this strange way, just simply through the things that had accidentally survived. And there was this story that was in one of her school books, which was The Most Wonderful Day of My Life. And it was a story about travelling with her parents to the beach and going for a swim and having a picnic. And it was, it was so innocent, but there was something really beautiful in that. I wondered whether she remembered that day all her life, or whether it was just something she did. She could have made it up for school. But apart from the music, which I probably don't even have time to go into all the things there, but the one thing that really inspired our film was an annual report from the radiophonic workshop, and there was only one preserved in the archive. It was one particular year in the mid-60s, and it listed all the workshop's output by title, didn't say the composers, didn't say what they were for, and I wrote down as many of these titles as I could because I just absolutely loved them. And all the sections of our film we named after titles from this radiophonic report, because that's kind of how they were. They all had wonderful, so we used titles like First Time Out, Going, I Measured the Skies, but there were things like Living Language, or North Beat, or the Black Tower, or you just read these phrases out of context, and we just instantly started imagining what we could do with those. And I think that gave an insight into also how they worked in the radiophonic workshop. Yeah,
a lot of the time I know the Doctor Who theme, they sort of didn't have any, there was just a sketchy kind of credits, I think, and knew that there was this new series, but yes, they don't necessarily get much information. And I know from what Dick Mills has said, it's a very quick turnaround as well. So you're given that title and you just run with it. You might do, what was it, John Baker or David Kane, who did the ruler twang for the pigs farming programme, and create early techno. So there is lots of things with that. You can imagine them having to turn it around quickly and get playful with it as well. Brilliant. Lacey?
So I visited the archive, and mainly I was going through all her visual materials and just going through her notes and even her collection of cards. That was very cute, and her drawings and her school books. What really drew my attention was her work notes, her correspondence when she was working for BBC. I think she was creating the soundtrack for a TV show, And seeing that, it didn't really act as a springboard, but it kind of is like a correction for my own process and made me realize how unorganized I was compared with her, you know, like how she planning her work and how well structured her work was. So it just allows me to take a step back to look at my shortboard and trying to correct myself in terms of how my workflow was poorly constructed. Yeah, and it was really valuable assets that she left for me.
Yeah, we became really interested in process, and I think that's something that Delia was kind of so heavily invested in, was kind of process structure. And so we thought, okay, well, how can we take some of that into our work and how we're working? And so I think that influenced quite heavily what we decided to do, and we spent the day together in the archive. So it was also getting to know Delia, but we were getting to know each other as well, and we'd met before on the beach in Liverpool, so it was just a really nice bonding experience for us. And for me as well, just in terms of the kind of the sound-based stuff, I really liked the makeup tapes, so the unfinished works, because you kind of saw all the different elements that were compiled to make the works, and I just loved seeing that kind of process kind of unsewn almost, if that makes sense. Unraveled. And so I spent quite a lot of time with the makeup tapes, more time than I thought I would. But aside from that, I really loved like the ambient gothic sounds and the way that Delia was able, you know, Dreams, for example, I'd never listened to that in full, so I listened to the whole thing, and it was so spooky, so uncanny, and you know, had so much emotion in it, and it was so kind of like, it created this new world, you know, as you listen to it and as you listen to the voices in that, and then how Delia had kind of so sensitively worked in the kind of her work into that. That was really inspiring.
Fantastic. So we're going to move on now to Commission 1, and we're going to pass over to Katie and Susie to introduce their piece, which is called Location Gilsland.
When we first got the commission, Katie and I were very interested in what Delia Derbyshire was doing when she was around our ages, because at that time she was seen as being sort of declined. She sort of dropped off the radar creatively, and there was a bit of a mystery around what she did, whether she did anything or not, because she left the radiophonic workshop in '73 and she ended up in Cumbria. And David Butler has done some excellent research on that to show that actually, although she was not producing that as much, she did create some, you know, some things during that time that we were very influenced by. So things like she made some art films with the video and art film makers Madeline Huykas and Elsa Stansfield, and they were a big influence on what we were doing, and we were interested in that because both Katie and I had long breaks away from doing public work ourselves. We'd continued being creative in a sort of a private way, but this Delia Derbyshire commission for both of us is like our coming back to being artists again. So we were very interested in basically this whole thing about Delia going to Gilsland.
Yeah, and it being sort of, you know, her escape up north and what happened when she moved there, and maybe perhaps we weren't so interested in, it turns out what we ended up making wasn't focusing maybe too much on what happened in her personal life then, or the reasons as to why she left, but more to use Gilsland as a sort of a title, much like a report title like from the archive, for us to create the new work. So it's kind of compromises of 4 short programs, sort of inspired or in this sort of inspired by sort of 70s, 80s BBC for Schools programs, factual programs, and so I think it's this character of Gilsland that we found or we created that isn't probably true. It's like an imagination, our imagined version of Gilsland, all with the sort of Delian eye.
But they are all true places.
But they are
they're all true places, and they all relate in an oblique way to things to do with her life. It's just we're very obviously not making biographical statements or very overt geographical statements, so it's sort of part real, part not.
And you researched the pipeline project that she
Oh, yeah.
worked on, didn't you?
Yeah, I was very interested in, that's very sound very boring. I was very interested in the pipeline. She created all this amazing music, and
That
I was
went to your
interested in
house
the
in the northeast.
we did some, we had a research team on that, and
Yeah.
well, we wanted to know, why did she go there? She got the job, and that's what took her there. And they were building this enormous pipeline that extended the North Sea gas from Scotland down into England, and eventually it would go down to northern England, and eventually we saw this pipeline split off and reach the northeast of England, and would eventually reach my home. And I remember in 1984 gas reaching us in the northeast, and she got that job because one of the companies working on the contract were French. We found this out. We found the Lane photo archives and found some photos of the pipeline being put in, and let's get this massive construction, and the scale of the construction in the middle of this wild landscape was very inspiring.
I think basically it's going to be Location Gilsland Part 2, that one.
Yeah.
The gas pipe.
Yeah. Pursuing the pipeline.
Yeah, definitely.
Pursuing the pipeline part. Brilliant. So without further ado, we present to you the premiere of Location Gilsland by Katie Mason and Susie Mangan.
Oh, I know this place. I've imagined something like it.
I like swimming in the sea and outdoor ponds. because it feels like you're being held by the world somehow.
think I would have achieved by this age, or whether I feel like I'm at the right point in my life.
That was something that I had never really considered before. I kept saying, I can't do it, I can't do it, and he was saying, you can do it, and I guess that's when my conception of marriage changed. I never thought I would get married until someone proposed to me, and I realised that someone wanted to marry me.
So yeah, I did think I would be married by this age.
It was the most perfect ring. someone wanted to marry me and be with me forever.
I just said, are you joking?
The thought that someone would choose me and, you know, all my flaws and want to be with me.
Will you marry me?
A wonderful thing.
Are you joking?
It's not love all the time.
Are you joking? And I said yes.
Publié, rappelons-le, dans le prochain numéro de la revue mensuelle, édité par l'École des Parents, 4 rue Grenelle, Paris 17e. Ainsi s'achève notre émission, Institutions et société.
La mère de Jésus lui dit, ils n'ont plus de vin.
Thank you so much, Susie and Katie. That was extraordinary. It was like my childhood, and yet a sense of familiar but utterly estranging as well. The cinematography is so luminous in that. So there's so much to talk about it, but hopefully we'll be able to say something more a bit later on. Hello, everybody. This is the next part of Delia Derbyshire Day, and this, in similar vein actually to Location Gilson, this next piece is also a blend of something old and something new, archive and original footage. This piece is called Strange Lines and Distances. It's from 2019 originally. It's an audio collage that I've put together. So my name is David Butler and I work with the Delia Derbyshire archive. And it's archived from Delia's collection at John Lyons Library with original visuals by the visual artist Andrea Pathos and vocals by Matt Berry. And Matt's vocals are from Francis Bacon's New Atlantis. This was published the year after his death in 1627. It's an extraordinary passage. It's a passage which had featured throughout the radiophonic workshop, particularly for Daphne Oram, the co-founder of the workshop. She was very taken with this. In this section, Bacon describes this incredible institution where the most extraordinary sounds are generated and transformed. And that's been set to sounds from Delia's archive which relate to that. You'll hear a bit of Mozart's Don Giovanni, which Delia has looped for a film called Robert Lowell from 1970, and she's done that looping. Part of the text talks about the sounds of beasts and birds. So Delia was just brilliant at simulating particularly bird calls, and you'll hear some of her bird sounds within this. So it's strange lines and distances with additional sound design by Cliff Jones, originally in Electronic Sound magazine in 2019. Hope you enjoy it.
We have also sound houses, where we practice and demonstrate all sounds and their generation. We have harmonies, which you have not, of quarter sounds and lesser slides of sounds. Divers instruments of music likewise to you unknown, some sweeter than any you have. Together with bells and rings that are dainty and sweet. We represent small sounds as great and deep. Likewise, great sounds extenuate and sharp. Certain helps, which set to the ear do further the hearing greatly. We also have divers strange and artificial echoes, reflecting the voice many times, and as it were tossing it, and some that give back the voice louder than it came, some shriller and some deeper, some rendering the voice differing in the letters or articulate sound from that they receive. We have also means to convey sounds in trunks and pipes, in strange lines and distances. strange lines and distances. We have also sound houses, where we practice and demonstrate all sounds and their generation.
I hope you enjoyed that. So we're now on to our final piece, which is our second commission. This is from Madeline Hall and Lacey Leanne, and it's called Hybrid Ecologies Between Sky and Soil. If I could hand over to Lacey and Madeline, could you just introduce the piece and say something about how it's come about and what we want to convey through it?
Yeah, sure. So I suppose what we were trying to do was create a dialogue between the natural world and the synthesized world. We first met at kind of, I can't remember how far into the commission, but a kind of month in, and we sat on the beach in Liverpool and just kind of talked about what we were interested in. And we were really both very interested in nature and the way that humans and people interact with technology.
The human impact on Earth as well.
And the human impact on Earth. So yeah, I think after we went to the archive, we started thinking about how we could make that manifest. And so we chose to use a mixture of, you used raw footage, didn't you?
Yes, yeah.
And I used found sounds and field recordings from the natural world. And then we combined those to create a mixture of kind of a synthesized world and a kind of cross-pollination of the real and the unreal, which was quite also an influence from Delia's kind of manifestations of the uncanny as well. So yeah, and we did this kind of call and response approach. So each of us initiated one part of the video. So initially I initiated. Oh, you did the first one, didn't you?
I think we just finished it in the same time.
Yeah.
So what we did is, because we know that Delia, she likes to use everyday objects and homemade devices to initiate her sound to make her piece of music. So we thought, how about we enters a narrative that creates a space, combines the technological and the natural thing. So she went to the forest and she did some
field recordings on Bidston Hill of female tawny owls, which also was a kind of another nod to Delia because she loved recording and creating the sound of birds. And I was really lucky to get some amazing recordings of tawny owls. And I basically created my track on the basis of those sounds, and I did heavily process them, I spliced them, and did what Delia does, but with the equipment that I have now, which is like a digital workstation. So, treated the sounds, spliced the sounds to create the kind of emotional and sound palette of the piece. And then you responded to it visually.
Yeah, that was amazing. And what I initiated was that I went to the Crosby Beach in Liverpool, so I did some recording as well. But it was quite challenging when I tried to thinking about how am I going to manipulate it at home on my computer, and what am I going to like reflect the theme, imagination, to the raw footage. And yeah, it was really hard in the beginning until we had several meetings. You know, I let her know my concern, and yeah, Carol, you've done a really good job picking my bits on artists. Yeah, yeah. So I think our collaboration has been, you know, has been synergized. The result, yeah, yeah. I'm really happy with the result.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was a very kind of reciprocal process. So we talked a lot over the period of time that we were working together. And there was kind of, we had little feedback sessions, and it was interesting actually because we got to, I think we were really influenced by kind of the way in which process influenced Delia's work. So we tried to borrow some of that, and I think we kind of, yeah, we decided to kind of think about how we could manipulate the structure of the piece together, and yeah, think about the process that would be useful for us, and also given, you know, the context that we're all in, which is a pandemic, of how we could make the most of what we have. And you know, because normally when I do a collaborative project, I would work in the same space as someone, so for me it was quite different, being kind of having a kind of parallel creative processes, so creating these two parts where we each kind of initiated and then we responded to one another's work, whether visual or sound, was a really nice way to kind of pull the project together for us and give us something to work within.
It also allows us to enter a dialogue to each other, isn't it? And especially during the pandemic. And I was in the beginning, I was thinking about using augmented reality so the audience can interact with in real time, but you know, we didn't ended up go down that route. Yeah, so it's just heavily, you know, computer manipulated in the end.
And from the sound of it, both of you were sort of like developing new methods that you hadn't sort of necessarily used in the past, sort of.
Yeah, absolutely. To be honest, my background's visual arts, and before the pandemic, I was playing a lot of clubs, and I've been working in recent years doing more commissioned-based work, but I actually realized I want to work. This is how I want to work. I want to work in a way which is more commission-based. I'm not too bothered about doing live performances anymore. And so for me, it was a way of settling into a way of working, and a new way of working that I hadn't done before, because as I said, I'd worked collaboratively but with artists. So I work with choreographers, and I might work with visual artists, but we work together on a project. So it was really good to have the opportunity to do a score where I was purely responding to something or purely initiating something, which is not a kind of way in which I'd worked anyway. And I know you'd experimented as well in new ways of working.
Yeah. I used to work up on Brave and guidelines, and this is an amazing opportunity for us to have our own freedom and to explore and experiment.
Should we share it?
Go for it.
I feel like I want to say the owls are not what they sing, just to Twin Peaks referencing. So this is hybrid ecologies.
Thank you.
Well, hope you enjoyed that second commission for Delia Derbyshire Day 2021. And yeah, both commissions, well done, artists. Thank you so much for putting so much into this. You know, there's so much authenticity, generosity, and dedication, which has been, yeah, not just a relief, a wondrous thing for us to have given you that opportunity. And of course, we need to thank our funders, the Arts Council England and the Granada Foundation. Thank you, Blue Dot and What Media for supporting this evening, and Anthony Burgess Foundation for hosting us. Obviously, also thanks to Electronic Sound Magazine, John Rylands Library, helping with access to the archive, Sound on Sound Magazine for their media support, the Delia Derbyshire Estate for their permission for us to interact and support the project, and of course, Delia herself for being a legend. Before we go, I'd just like to hear from everyone. So now you've been immersed in the Delian world for nigh on 6 months. Throwing away practicalities and reality, where would you like to take your art next?
I think I'm going to concentrate on bringing back teletext.
I'm in with her on that. I want to commission some teletext stuff very quickly. I'm also going to release the soundtrack to Logation Gilsland with an accompanying pamphlet that won't be 18 pence, like it says at the end of the film, on my own label when I set it up, with some extra pieces that didn't get used in the film. And I wanted to do art film stuff like this for a while, and I found someone I really like working with, and I would like to continue working with Katie.
I think I'm just gonna keep exploring on my newly developed method, you know, just taking more raw footage and combine it with computer-generated image.
I'd love to do a straight-up film score. And, you know, I really enjoyed responding directly to Lacey's work. So yeah, that's one way I'd like to take it, and also I would like to explore releasing the work as well. Yeah, I'm really happy and proud of it.
Yeah,
so thank
fantastic.
you for the opportunity.
Yeah, well done, well done. So the newly commissioned works that you've experienced this evening will be on our YouTube channel for the next couple of weeks, and Andrea's video with the strange lines and distances, will be available indefinitely on our YouTube channel. So yes, we just remains to say thank you very much, and may the Delian force be with you. Enjoy the rest of DD Day 2021. Thank you and goodbye.